We know employers want creative thinkers. We know creative thinking is necessary to solve the many problems we see everywhere in our world. We know we want our students to learn to be more creative. But what does that mean exactly? Where does the science of creativity meet the cultural definition we all build for ourselves just by swimming in the 21st century stream? My guest today is Dr. Zorana Ivcevic Pringle. With more than 25 years as a scientist studying creativity, Zorana brings insights into the nature of the creative process, from the first decision to engage with new ideas to its culmination in creative performances and products. She is a scientist at Yale University, an author, and a speaker. Zorana's work has been featured in the Harvard Business Review, ArtNet, U.S. News, Education Week, Science Daily, El País, and others. And she's a regular contributor to Psychology Today and Creativity Post. Today, we're talking with her about how science defines creativity and how research shows us we can guide our students and ourselves to develop more creative confidence. You'll learn what's important in designing your space, launching and building creative units, speaking with students about the hurdles that get in their way, and assessing creative work with a method that's meaningful for student development along the way, not just at the end. We'll also be jumping into educator creativity and why it matters. Honestly, and you can read my honest Amazon review, I started Zorana's book, The Creativity Choice, searching for everything I could find to help me understand classroom creativity better. But I finished with fresh ideas, not only about constructing curriculum and building classroom spaces, but also about how I personally tackle projects, run my company, and talk to my kids about their ideas. It's a wonderful book. I'm excited to share this interview with you today, so let's dive in. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers looking for more. More creativity, more engagement, more joy, and no more scripted curriculum, lesson planning ruts, or boring book lists. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm honored you're trusting me to help. You're not alone on this creative journey anymore. Well, welcome to the show, Dr. Zorana Ivcevic Pringle. It's so wonderful to have you join us. And I wanted to start by saying congratulations on your wonderful book, The Creativity Choice, which I've got sitting right here on my desk covered in enthusiastic notes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me and for the enthusiastic notes.
Well, I thought we could start with your own definition of creativity. I've heard Sir Ken Robinson, who I think a lot of teachers look to on this subject, define creativity as applied imagination. How does that compare with the way you think about it?
I think the definition of creativity as applied imagination is beautiful. It is evocative. It is almost poetic. And there's nothing wrong with it in that sense. It is something that we can intuitively understand. But it doesn't have the precision of a scientific definition. Mm-hmm. And as a scientist, I rely on a scientific definition of creativity. And of course, I have great respect for Sir Ken Robinson, who has done a lot to bring attention to the importance of creativity and educating for creativity. And as I said, there's nothing wrong with it, but the more precise definition of creativity says it is something, and I use that word something for a reason, I'll come back to it, that satisfies two criteria. It is original and it is effective or appropriate in some way. And depending on the level of creativity, what is exactly original and what is exactly effective or appropriate will differ. From the lowest levels of creativity that are very important in the learning process, those insights and making connections, meaningfulness is really important. Meaningfulness to the individual, something that clicks for them, But it's not exactly necessarily original for anybody else. Maybe other people have already had that insight before, but for them it's transformative. And then on the level of everyday creativity, we are talking about originality in relation to our immediate environment, like other students or other educators. And then on the professional level, we are really talking about something that is contributing to an area of work or domain of knowledge in meaningful ways that there is a level of consensus about the validity and value of their contribution. So we see how that really differs.
Yeah. Okay. So there are three different kind of branches of creativity, kind of levels from the more novice creativity all the way up to the truly professional. Am I summarizing that right?
You have summarized it great, but I failed to mention yet a fourth level of creativity. And the reason why I didn't mention it is that we already all know about it. It's the level of genius creativity, eminent creativity. You know, when we think about Sir Ken Robinson, he would be there. He has done something truly, deeply transformative. Uh, think of Steve Jobs, think of Albert Einstein, or Claude Monet, who have done these truly culture level transformative contributions.
Yes. So I guess that's the level of creativity so many of us tend to think about. It's the model that's often put in front of us, but possibly a model that's kind of intimidating for our students.
It is, you're bringing up a really important point there that it's not just intimidating to students, it's intimidating to all of us.
Yes.
Um, and for a good reason. Just try to think of what goes through mind uh, as we think, well, that is the definition of creativity. If we only define creativity in terms of that genius, what we in the science of creativity call big C creativity, then it is very clear to us and very clear to students at a pretty early age that we are not that. Uh, Most of us, almost none of us, are going to live up to that definition. And that can be discouraging because if that is the only definition of creativity, then it is completely reasonable, logical to say, well, why even try?
Yeah. Which is exactly what we don't want for our students and ourselves.
It's exactly what
Um,
we don't want. And that's why I really started our conversation with let's even put that aside.
yeah.
That is so rare in the world that we truly don't know how to nurture that kind of creativity. We don't even know whether it's even possible to study it because our methods of studying it require a large number of people to be in our studies. We really cannot address that question. But
Yeah.
for our personal well being, for our success in life, for contributing to society, really we are talking about the three levels that are not that genius.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm really excited to talk about cultivating these levels with our students. But before we dive into that, I wanted to ask you, as a creative person yourself, who's also a researcher on creativity, that has to be kind of meta for you as you come up with your own processes. How do you approach a creative task?
Uh, the first thing I do when I'm approaching a creative task is to remind myself what creativity is like. That there are very exciting and joyful parts of it, times of true elation, but there are also times that are very difficult, truly challenging, stressful, sometimes overwhelmingly frustrated. And those times are not a sign that I am not able to rise to the occasion, that I'm not able to achieve something creative, they are an inherent part of the creative process. And I like to start by saying, okay, this is something new. It hasn't been done before. I have a general idea of what I'm doing, but I understand that the best laid plans are not real plans in the sense of turn by turn directions. Things are going to change, ideas are going to change. What I start with is not going to be what I end up with. And that helps me center in the true nature of the creative process so it doesn't become overwhelming.
That's so interesting. And so intriguingly challenging to help our students get there, because there's a lot of mental processes there, that we can't create a checklist for, that we can't give them an exact timeline for. And so I want to walk through kind of different parts of the job of teacher in helping our students to be more creative with you, and just get your advice on what we can do as educators to help students with this process that can feel somewhat intangible, but at the same time, as your research and your book shows, there are so many specific ways to make it more tangible, to make it more possible. So let's start with the classroom space. I want to just zoom out from the school a little bit and look down from overhead. Here's an empty classroom. If you were going to set out to create a space that was designed to help encourage so many of these things you talk about in your book: creative self efficacy, creative risk taking, collaboration, seeing role models of these different seas of creativity, what would that space be like?
That is a really interesting question. There isn't a single kind of space that is the correct space.
Mhm.
And if we are thinking of designing a classroom, we have to think a little bit more broadly to what happens in the classroom. And all kinds of things happen in the classroom. Students have to uh, have a space. They need to have resources. They are asked to do different kinds of tasks. And the space should be such that it can be flexible to enable all these different tasks. So I think that the first thing is that the space shouldn't be cluttered. I have been in classrooms that have lots of wonderful resources, and I could see the reason why each of them are there, but at some point it becomes so much that it can be a sensory overload for a student, and it becomes more difficult to focus. I sometimes wonder, how would we as adults in the workplace react to very cluttered places? So I think that a space should first uh, be thought as fulfilling flexibly different purposes. One of which is just focusing on material being presented and being learned. Uh, the most important thing for creativity is breadth. It is having broad interests, it is having broad materials from which people can draw inspiration. And that is valid for classrooms too. Students should have access to different kinds of information that are presented in different ways that might be unexpected. There could be, for instance, art books in a science classroom. or the other way around. Artists have done that for a long time, built on different interests. So we could learn from how creators do it and then try to create those circumstances in a classroom.
Hmm. That's really interesting. So the interdisciplinary connections actually help students come up with unexpected ideas.
They help students come up with unexpected ideas and different perspectives on something. So, to give you an example, and this is an example of a very famous artist, Salvador Dali, who was drawing inspiration from science. He subscribed to scientific journals earlier in his career. Those were journals in psychology and psychotherapy, which were cutting edge disciplines at the time, just emerging. And he read them, he wrote on the margins, he deeply engaged how portrayed these ideas in his art. And later on, he was inspired by nuclear physics. And he read that matter is made up of small particles and empty space in between. And he created works that are trying to portray that very vividly to his audiences. Of course, we are not Salvador Dali ourselves, and we don't have to be. But we can learn. We can learn from other people's practices and experiences. And it is possible. It is a challenge for an art teacher to have books about science in their classrooms, or the other way around, and try to expand different ways of seeing for students, uh, and that is going to create new connections.
Yeah. That kind of drives us towards the next question, where I was hoping to zoom down from our overhead view and be thinking more about the curriculum itself. And so I have a few questions for you about how teachers can develop curriculum and learning processes with an eye to creativity. And I suspect these are also going to be kind of hard to answer with just one, brief answer, but just to start the conversation. So, my first question about developing curriculum with an eye to creativity is to talk about student choice and student agency. How much um, decision over their own learning do you feel like is important for students to have?
Students are willing to persist and put more effort when they perceive they have some choice. We have done research with high school students, and that is the number one finding we had.
Wow.
And they also are willing to persist more and put more effort if they perceive the task to be a creative challenge as opposed to what they consider simply an academic challenge.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is that students do not always recognize what is truly a creative challenge. So we have done research in a school that was a partner school where we knew that teachers have great value, place great value on creativity, and we have seen the range of creative projects that teachers engage students with. But when we ask students about their creative challenges, they were largely not about those projects. They were about arts and music primarily. and they were about some extracurricular activities, but not very many students have recognized those true efforts of teachers to provide opportunity for creativity. And the reason why is it's so simple that it's surprising that teachers do not always very explicitly say that this is an opportunity for creativity. Students crave it, but if they are not told explicitly, this is your chance to be creative, to put your ideas, your thoughts in the process, students don't recognize it.
So, anytime a teacher is rolling out a project in which they want to see creative student work, they need to be clear that this is a creative opportunity, that they want students to use their creative thinking, so that students feel more free to do that and also realize that they're doing it.
Exactly. Teachers should tell students explicitly and for different reasons. One is that students don't necessarily recognize it, but there are other reasons too. Another one is that by asking students explicitly to be creative, they are in a way giving them permission. Students do not so much then have to focus in their minds on what did the teacher want me to do, right? Anybody who has ever taught is familiar with that.
Yes.
Students trying to be mind readers.
Yes.
And teachers don't want that. Teachers don't want students to do whatever they think they are supposed to do. They would like them to engage, to think critically, think creatively. By explicitly telling them to do that, they are signaling that permission. And they are also signaling their trust that students uh, have what it takes to rise to this occasion. And in research on self-efficacy is showing us that that sense of yes, I can do something, that sense of efficacy and confidence. One of the ways it is built is by encouragement from others. It's by recognizing that others trust that you do have that ability. And then you start thinking, hey, if they think I can do it, perhaps I really can.
So it's a pretty self-fulfilling cycle for kids. If they have the opportunity and then they're successful with it and the teacher encourages them, then on their next creative project, when they're explicitly told this is a creative opportunity, they'll feel more confident.
Exactly. Confidence, the technical term being self efficacy,
Self-efficacy.
is something that is built. And sometimes students think that it is a starting point, that you first have to be confident in order to do something that is challenging. But the truth is a little bit different. Yes, confidence is important. However, you do not have to start with full confidence. I like to use an analogy with fuel. Confidence is fuel for our action. But think of a car, a thing that needs fuel to run and get from one place to another to its destination. It doesn't need a full tank or a full charge to get from point A to point B. Uh, it is enough to have sometimes even quarter tank to get somewhere. Maybe that is partway to our final destination, but there we can recharge. There we can see, oh, okay, where am I? What have I done? Recognize the success, recognize the progress, and in that way recharge our batteries or refill our tanks.
I love that. So, we're in this place where we're setting students up for a creative task. We've spoken to them specifically about the fact that we want them to use their creative thinking. They're getting on the roll to start building their creative self-efficacy. Now we get to the part where they are going to be working on the project. And you've mentioned already that when you work to get into your own creative process, you're really thinking about this isn't going to go according to a prescribed series of steps, and I have to be okay with that. So, how can that process play out in the classroom when teachers want to support students to realize they may have to pursue a topic and then reframe their problem and then try something else and then try something else? Like, how can we prepare for that as teachers?
I think that what teachers can do is make some things explicit and then scaffold the process for students. We cannot expect students to know what educators and what we as people studying creativity know that
Yes.
what is the true nature of the creative process. We cannot expect them to know that, but we can communicate that to them so that they don't misinterpret some signals. Students are very prone to misinterpreting signals due to lack of their experience. If they encounter a creative block, which is an experience of being stuck on something, but scientific definition says it's an experience of being stuck on something that is not due to lack of ability. They don't know that part of the definition. They just experience it very viscerally as something that is overwhelmingly frustrating. And they can take the message that, well, this just proves they cannot do it. So we need to really communicate to them that that is not the case and provide strategies how to address these challenges in the creative process.
So, as the teacher, as students are working, you can kind of be joining their groups, jumping in with their partnerships, asking them how things are going, and just giving them that reframe like, hey, you've hit a block here. That is so normal. That is something that happens to every creator. Like, what can we try to get past this block? Kind of like that, like in one-on-one scenarios, or maybe just give a little mini lesson on the creative block somewhere in the middle of the project, just to help students be like, hey, this is going to happen. When it does happen, here are some things we can try.
That is a great approach. If there is an opportunity to do something one on one, that is probably the most effective because there is that emotional connection too. However, that is not always possible, and we have to live within the limits of the world as it exists. So I understand that, and teachers are doing incredible work in sometimes difficult circumstances. So the strategy that you mentioned, that is part way through a month long project. Teachers giving a mini lesson on what creative block is and what are possible strategies to get through it. And when I was first proposing my book, I did not plan to have a whole chapter about creative block, but my editor was, please do. And I realized that she was very right. And I have a whole standalone chapter on the creative block because it's such a common experience that we really need to first pause, acknowledge that is something that happens very often, and then have I consider it sort of a three-step approach. It is little bit of a simplification to say a three-step approach, but three things you can do. And first, you have to start with all those things you say to yourself. So imagine you are working on something. Of course, chances are there is a deadline involved, and now you're not making progress. Well, how would that make you feel?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, how would that make you feel?
Oh, probably not great. Probably frustrated and less confident.
Exactly, exactly. And that happens to absolutely everybody. I have done a study with professional creators in a variety of fields and asked them what happens emotionally to you as you encounter a creative block. Everybody experienced it at some point. And there was one word that just about everybody mentioned, it's frustration. And for some people, that frustration takes different forms. Like it can be tinged with anger. For some people, with self doubt. For some people, with self recrimination. It can take different forms, but it's quite overwhelming. And when we feel like this, we tend to engage in rather negative self talk. So we say to ourselves that we should have known better, that this was obviously not a good approach to begin with. Right? Does that sound familiar? Have you ever done that to yourself?
Maybe.
Yes, I know, I know. I have two, and we just do it rather automatically. If you know this happens, it might still happen automatically, but then you can stop yourself and say, hey, what are you doing here? You have been doing the best you can. Yes, this ended up being a dead end, but chances are you couldn't have known better. And in those times, and this works particularly well with teens who are, I would say, particularly susceptible to self recrimination, uh, ask them to imagine what would they say if this was an experience of their best friend. Their best friend is telling them, I got stuck. I should have known better. And it was really stupid what I've done. Just try to imagine that teen talk, right? What would the student then tell to that friend? And chances are they would not tell a friend, yeah, you really should have known better. Yeah, that was really stupid. You would provide kindness, you would provide compassion.
Absolutely.
So if you imagine not speaking to yourself, but speaking to a friend, you are going to be able to say to yourself, hey, you couldn't have known. And that act can take the edge off. Now that the edge is off, you can use other strategies in that step two. And that step two is trying to find ways to broaden your thinking again. Because when you are stuck, what happens is that you are totally focused on that one detail that does not work. Your thinking has narrowed. Your thinking has not narrowed because you're not capable of broader thinking. It has narrowed because of all that emotional stuff going on when feeling that there's a creative block. And to broaden our thinking again, the first thing that we should do, and that many people are quite bad at doing, is to take a break. To say, okay, right now, this is not working. I am going to do something else. Sometimes when I talk to adults, they say, well, I cannot take a break because I have a deadline or because I have so much to do. And I'm not saying you have to take a break and then go on vacation or, take a day off or anything like that. Take a break from that specific thing that you are stuck on. You can do something else. If you are experiencing a creative block when working on a research project in your science class, then maybe you just switch and work on your math homework. Or something else that is still going to be related to that sense of productivity and that sense of, well, you are working towards goals, but you would give your brain a break to to kind of disconnect a little bit from that thing that you are stuck on.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just an act of taking a break will do the job. When you return, somehow it experientially it seems like magic. It's not actually magic. It is it is taking a step back and then being able to see the problem in a new light. Just taking a break can do the job. Not always, though. I'm not going to guarantee and say it's always going to do the job. Sometimes you have to start reading something else. You have to seek different perspectives on the problem very purposefully, even if it's going to take some time. And another thing that you really can do is reach out to others. And particularly reach out to others who you might not be talking to every day. Chances are if you that you already have talked to your best friend about the project you're working on, and if you talk to them again, probably they cannot provide a new perspective. But if you talk to somebody new, somebody you haven't discussed it with before, then you might start seeing something you haven't before.
So that might be a place where the teacher could help students in getting feedback from new people in the room, or having them match with another class or some adult mentors in the community or something like that, who could come in at some point in the process of a project for students to talk to and bounce ideas off, because they're probably not feeling like they have a professional network just yet.
Those are fantastic ideas, and all of those ideas can have multiple benefits. So let's take the idea of having a mentor from the community come to talk to students. Let's say that is somebody who's a professional in a particular field, and they can share some of their experiences in work, and then maybe spend some time discussing problems with students who are working on their projects. Students can gain new perspectives, and that is a tangible benefit for a particular project, but they gain something else. They also gain having a role model that they can imagine. We have touched upon a little bit earlier on the fact that those big C creative individuals, those geniuses in a particular field, are not necessarily the best role models. Researchers have done studies where they showed descriptions of creativity in terms of something that those eminent creators do, and then to other people, descriptions of creativity in terms of what people around them, just like those professionals from the community, do in their lives. And they have found that thinking of creativity as either genius or as something that is around you has profound consequences. When we learn of creativity and we think of creativity as examples of those around you, we learn a growth mindset of creativity. But when we have those very eminent genius role models, we take the message that creativity is just something you are born with and there is not much you can do about it.
Well, so we're building this look at how we can create more effective creative curriculum. And we've talked about giving students choice and agency to improve their motivation, setting them up for a successful process along the way, and helping them feel like they can get past roadblocks, kind of some of the things that teachers can do to help them reframe problems. And now we're getting to the end of the project. And I think this is something that teachers are really interested to hear about because it can be so difficult to think how to give feedback on creative student work. You want to build up their self efficacy. You want them to feel confident that when presented with a challenge, they can come up with an idea. But you also don't want to say, like, okay, this is amazing if they didn't work very hard, if they didn't try one of these strategies to get past their roadblocks. How do teachers balance giving effective feedback that will help push students forward with trying to build up their creative confidence and helping them to see themselves as thinkers who can make an impact in the world?
It is not just a matter of the end of the project. So let's take one step back. At the end of the project, I truly believe that students benefit from teachers evaluating the quality of that project. And what I think is going to build self confidence, like you mentioned, and build those skills of creativity and attitudes toward creativity is not necessarily what teachers do at the end of the project, but throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take the example of creative self efficacy. It is built from experience. Students are going to have the least self efficacy at the beginning of the project. That is just the way it works. That is not anything wrong with students. That is simply how human mind works, and that is okay. The thing that teachers can do at the very beginning, what we already touched on, is explicitly ask for creativity. This seems a little bit counterintuitive, I find, when I talk to educators, because we have this belief that creativity needs to be free and unrestrained. However, creativity is actually greatest when there are some limits on it. And also it is greater when we explicitly ask for it. And that is the first step. Then, how to build that confidence? Well, chunk a project that is a substantial project, sizable project, whatever that means at a particular age or particular project or subject matter. But chunk it so that students start with something relatively small on which they get feedback. And that feedback will be a way for them to realize that they have that capacity. It will be their opportunity to both get feedback from the teacher and also to realize on their own, hey, I have done this one task, I have done it well, I will be able to do the next task on my list. So create a stepwise process, not a stepwise process in the sense that is completely linear, that students cannot ever go back in the process, but a little bit of a scaffolded process with some points of feedback. And teachers are already doing a lot of that. This is not reinventing the wheel. This is just adding, kind of sparkling some creativity science on top of it. Um, Simply saying to students, yes, you can go get it, it's not going to be helpful. Feedback needs to be specific. And student and teachers often have formative assessments uh, that are at their disposal throughout the process of working on something. Those are the ideal ways to build that confidence in students, and also to remind them of some parts of the creative process. Remind them that if something is not quite working, to try a different approach, to try to broaden their thinking. Teachers can also scaffold collaboration with other students strategically, so that early in the process they are pairing students with others who they normally don't talk with. And later on in the process, they pair students with those who are their close friends, or those who they are friendly with, or have relationship with. Because at different times in the process, students need different kinds of support. At first, they need support in terms of breadth of thinking and different perspectives, and later on, they need support in terms of emotional support.
That's so interesting and helpful. Thank you. I wanted to kind of pivot at this point in the interview. We've explored a lot about designing a unit around creative thinking in whatever subject and whatever grade level you're teaching. And in this last part of the interview, I wanted to ask you some questions about teachers as creative thinkers and creative problem solvers, because I think everybody listening to this podcast is a creative problem solver within their school. And so I wanted to just ask your opinion when it comes to teachers collaborating and trying to solve problems and come up with new ideas in their schools. What do you think would be like the format of a department meeting, say, in which teachers would have an opportunity to come up with new ideas for school?
Mm. Uh, that is a beautiful question. Teachers are, I believe, immensely creative in what they do, and they truly care about education. Um, they do not only have ideas how to teach better, more effectively, more engagingly in their classrooms, but also in their schools. Um, and everything we have discussed today applies not just to students, it applies to all kinds of creators. Solving problems that are school level problems or particular department level problems, in many ways are similar to students working um, on a project that is very much new to them. It is an attempt um, to do something that is original, that hasn't been done before, uh, and do it in a way that is going to be effective and solve a problem that teachers have identified in their schools. Um, so, starting with ideas, usually there is no shortage of ideas. The more challenging part is how to take ideas and make them into something tangible. Finding teams of collaborators who can champion something, who are not going to give up, uh, is very helpful, and not just very helpful, but in all likelihood necessary. And just realizing that what we start with is not necessarily what we end up with. That is a very difficult realization because it can mean that the vision that we have perhaps is not fully possible. It's not fully possible at a particular time. And it can emotionally at times feel like a letdown. But usually something is more than nothing.
Right.
And really important to create incremental change.
I want to follow up by asking about something that I've been reading about lately, which is the idea of ways that teacher creativity and student creativity are intertwined. And I'm wondering, kind of based on your research and your life as a professor, writer, and teacher, how important do you think it is for teachers to feel empowered in their own creative self efficacy to also then, in parallel, help students be more creative in their classrooms?
Teachers who teach creatively are going to be better able at engaging students and teaching them creativity skills. And everything we have talked about really applies to teachers as creators themselves. When you start a process of revising something that you are doing, of trying something new, remember that the creative process is inherently one that is uncertain, and that uncertainty is experienced psychologically as risk. It could be the case that your idea does not work. And it is now a judgment call whether it is worth trying anyway. If you don't try, you are not going to be able to do something creative. But of course, it is a balance. It is a balance of trying something with just that Goldilocks zone of is it worth taking this risk, considering I don't know how it's going to end up? Is it too hot? Is it, too cold?
Just right.
It has to be just right, but that just right, there is no formula for it. I cannot tell you what is going to be just right.
Mhm.
It is little bit a matter of valuing creativity enough that you are willing occasionally to fail. And think of what happens. So let's take the worst case scenario. You have tried a creative approach to a lesson, a unit, something in your classroom, and it has not worked out. So that can evoke all kinds of feelings because we are human. But in a way, it is also an opportunity. It is an opportunity to share with students that sometimes things do not work out. And we all want to tell students to try things and not to be paralyzed by fear of failure. We can only be successful not by what we say, but what we do. Students have to see that willingness in us also. And that being explicit, just like you are telling students, this is an opportunity for you to do something creative, you can give yourself permission to tell students, I am trying something creative that I haven't done before. And that can earn you respect and curiosity from students.
I love that because not only does it give you sort of an automatic backup plan if a lesson plan doesn't work, but it gives you just the space to try many things and to know that if one of them falls apart, you have an immediate way to really capitalize on that, to talk to students about the fact that that's okay.
Yeah, and you are not going to do at all times something totally wild and different.
Right.
You are going to do it occasionally. And you are also not going to completely upend everything that you have been doing and start everything from scratch. You as a human matter too, most definitely. So doing things in experimentally, where you are experimenting with one part of a unit, is a good starting point. Best goals for creative work are those that are just stretching you, but not so ambitious to become unlikely to work.
I think back to a time in my first year of teaching, I had read about this student centered discussion method called the Harkness method, and I was fascinated. And I came into school the next day in all four of my classes and said, we're going to run a Harkness experiment. We're going to use this student centered discussion model for 1 month, and we're going to learn as we go, and we're going to talk about what's going well and what's not, and we're going to try to learn from what the other classes learn, and at the end of the month we'll decide if we're going to continue with this. And it was really one of the most impactful teaching experiences of my life, because I went on to always use Harkness in all my classes for the rest of my time in the classroom. And now I really like to share about it with teachers. But I really had no idea that first day if it was going to work or not.
And whenever we are first trying something, we have no idea. If we have to have that certainty, if we are not able to accept that, well, I think it's going to work. Obviously, you think it's going to work on some level because you are decided to try it. You see some value, at least intellectually, in it. But if you are never willing to take any level of risk, well, students are not going to be willing to do it either, and you will not benefit from different approaches that can be transformative, like what you started.
Well, I want to finish with one big question here at the end, and it's this. I'm curious to know, in the age of AI, which is such a huge topic amongst educators right now, and I feel like especially within the humanities, our students have so much readily available information at their fingertips. How important do you think it is for educators to prioritize creative thinking and creative action in the classroom versus the coverage of content? What do you feel like is the right balance?
I like that you use the word balance, because it has to be a balance. I am a creativity scholar. I clearly believe in the importance of creativity, but I also believe in the importance of learning important content. And I don't think those are unrelated. We cannot be creating something out of nothing. Creativity is not done in an intellectual vacuum. Ideas don't come fully formed, they come as combination of different perspectives, combinations of ideas that come from maybe different domains of work, different fields, different disciplines that other people have not connected. They come from content. So, not having content or not having enough content is also going to, by extension, hurt creativity. So, I think that is one very important thing to remember and to be very clear about. And yes, these large language model AI engines are able to generate a lot of ideas. And it may seem, well, they can generate a lot of ideas, so human creativity is less important. But that is truly misleading, because let's first ask how they generated these ideas. If you simply ask them a one-line question, they are not going to generate truly creative ideas. They're going to produce something, but those ideas are not going to be particularly interesting. To get something more interesting from these models, you have to explain, you have to start building connections, you have to engage in a process of what scientists call problem construction, and formulating problem in different ways. That is part of the human creative process in itself. And only when we engage in this part of human creative process, these large language models truly produce something creative themselves. But what they produce is a starting point, like a draft. Now, we know, anybody who has ever done any kind of project, you start with a draft, but you don't end with a draft. So now you have a draft. Now you have to learn how to revise it, how to build on it, how to enrich it. That is part of human creativity, and the part that these machines cannot do on their own. They do not have self reflection. They do not say, hey, this wasn't good enough, and humans do.
I think that's a great place for us to end. Thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Pringle. I know teachers are going to want to go and learn more about your work and find your book. Where's the first place they should start?
First place to start is my website, and I'm sure that you can share the link.
Yes, yes, I will.
And I also write a newsletter where I share lots of tips and how-tos and the latest research translated for all of those people who just want to apply it. And I can share my Substack newsletter too.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us today as we talked about the science of creativity and how it might apply in your classroom and your creative life as an educator. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.